Everyone, and welcome back to the 8th week of the Kids Skype study group videos, as today we're going to be carrying on with the next character mentioned in the Hebrews chapter, as we're going to talk about the next faithful patriarch coming from the Abraham family. As we're going to carry on from past week's video, we've understood that we looked at Abraham, then we saw Isaac, and then last week we saw Jacob, and in this week's video we're going to see the character of Joseph, who was born to Jacob in his old age, and we understand his mother was Rachel. So if we recollect from what we saw from last week, we understood Jacob had two wives, and his favorite was Rachel, whom he had served Laban throughout the first 7 years of his stay in Paddan Aram, and even for an additional 7 years to be married to Rachel, for he loved her quite a lot, we can understand. We can understand clearly, or partly, no doubt, because of his fervent love for Rachel, that Jacob had esteemed Joseph so highly. But of course, Joseph's brethren, we understand, noticed this favoritism that his father had shown towards Joseph, because of how he had loved, we could say esteemed Joseph, like we said before, much more highly, because he was the son of his favorite wife Rachel. So in this situation they began to hate Joseph and could not speak peaceably unto him, and because of this selfish human nature, this led to jealousy and hatred for his brothers, to not like Joseph at all and always be away from him, for this favoritism that Jacob showed towards Joseph, they did not seem to like or acknowledge as something that they could learn from Joseph to show the same qualities. But we understand in this situation where Joseph has this unpleasant life with his brothers, we understand God blessed Joseph and provided dreams to connect with him and to deliver plans for them. For example, one of his dreams we can read in Genesis 37th chapter, 9th verse. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. So in this dream, we can clearly understand it signifying towards his brothers bowing down to him. And this was the main part, of course. His brothers had seemed to get extremely jealous of and extremely irritated by Joseph's actions, despite him telling the truth and understanding God's dreams, which is he has given to Joseph so he can connect and deliver God's plan. But we understand from this extreme jealousy, when he had started to observe this, his brothers envied. When he started to observe these dreams, much more, we understand his brothers envied him to the core even more and decided to kill him due to this extreme jealousy. So we have seen this attribute of jealousy take place once again in the Bible, as we saw when we did one of the first character videos. We saw about the character of Cain, and we saw about the extreme levels of jealousy and hatred and selfish nature to one's own self, we could say, leads to the direction of jealousy and hatred, and this jealousy and hatred can ultimately lead to the nature of murder or anger. And the same situation happened with Cain killing Abel, and the same situation the brothers of Joseph had taken this decision, we can see. But we understand Reuben, the younger brother, he urged his elder brothers not to kill him. But the brothers agreed to compromise because of Reuben's decision, we could say, and threw Joseph into a deep pit from which escape was impossible without help. And of course, the brothers did not want to help Joseph in this situation, as they were irritated and jealous towards Joseph to the core, we understand. Because of course, his father started to observe these dreams that Joseph was starting to get. Joseph himself started to observe these dreams. He started to express these dreams to the brothers. The brothers got irritated by what these dreams Joseph was saying, and saying, for example, that they had to bow down to him in one of the dreams they related to, we understand. And because of that, the brothers envy Joseph very much more, we can understand, to the core, we could say. So once they threw Joseph into a well which without help could not be escaped, they were about to abandon him there, we can see. When pausing for lunch before departing, they saw a group of Ishmaelite traders, I should say, en route to Egypt, and they decide to sell Joseph to them to be taken into Egypt to serve as a slave. So in this situation, we can see that Joseph has been taken away from his father. Now he's being taken away from his homeland itself, and he's being sold by his brothers due to their jealous nature towards him. So we can see the extreme nature of what jealousy can lead to in these situations, as we see. For example, now they've gone to the sense of selling their own brother just because of that jealous nature that they have towards him. But in Joseph's life, despite him being completely dispersed from his family and being in a situation as a slave, Joseph's life later, God lifted him in Egypt, we understand, whilst he was there, and proved all his dreams, and all the Israelites came to him for the survival, and his brothers and his father. We understand he showed his love and forgiveness, especially forgiveness, we can understand, because once he was in Egypt, God had lifted him and allowed Joseph to shine himself when it comes to being in a situation of goodness, we understand, in Egypt, as because the dreams that God had showcased, one being, of course, when the bowing down dream, which will come in a bit, we understand that these dreams came to him, and we understand in the end, for the survival of Israel due to a famine, his brothers and father had to come to Egypt, but Joseph still had shown his love and forgiveness, we understand. But however, we understand after the death of Jacob, their father, the brothers was fearful that Joseph was now going to show vengeance for their cruelty that they had shown to him in the young age by having the decision to want to kill him and ultimately selling him due to some compromise. But we understand this is where Joseph's peaceful characteristic and understanding characteristics and his love overshadows one's anger towards others and his forgiveness nature, because we understand if we read in Genesis 50th chapter 15th verse to 21st verse, a lot of verses, but this is very much an understanding part that is very much helpful for us in our own day-to-day lives. For these are five, we should not say five, there are many qualities that we can learn from Joseph in this chapter, for when he reassures his brothers, because now Jacob is gone. Joseph could have taken a chance, because before he could have stayed happy just because of his father's sake, for he wanted to keep his fathers happy. But now he had the chance to show all the pain towards his brothers and have vengeance for the cruelty they had shown to him. For now he was in a power where they were bowing down to him, and he was in a position of high position in Egypt, as he was literally the right-hand man, we could say, to the king of Egypt. But we clearly understand, once this still happens, Joseph reassures his brothers in Genesis 15th chapter, 15th to 22nd verse. If you read, it says, when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, what if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us all back for all the wrongs we did to him? So they sent a word to Joseph saying, your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs that he committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father. When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. We understand. We are your slaves, they said. But Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in a place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So here it is a very valuable lesson for us. First of all, there's many key qualities Joseph has shown. For example, not showing vengeance, revenge, we can understand. Showing kindness, we can understand from this as well. Showing those characteristics of peace, we can understand, and not going towards anger, especially, and of anger, because this is one of the key qualities that his brothers had shown due to their jealousy and hatred that developed into anger and emotion and decision of wanting to kill him. But we understand how Joseph clearly takes the situation in a beautiful way to say how his brothers had in a way helped these people by his by putting him in this situation, he's been able to save so many lives, and he has made the situation in a positive way, and trying to reassure his brothers that to not be afraid, and for that he will help his brothers' families and their children. For this is the characteristics Joseph shows in his life. We understand it, especially in Egypt. So these are characteristics that we must also follow in our own day-to-day lives when we are in situations of the chance to forgive others. For when we forgive others, we're the ones who are going to get blessed. But that is not the only reason, though. We should be forgiving others. We should be forgiving others for the understanding, because we have to understand that forgiving is a beautiful characteristic that God has given us the chance to show. And if we show these characteristics, we are going to get blessed. We are the ones who are going to be in the satisfaction sense of helping others and ultimately being kind to others for showing good characteristics, forgiving others, and not showing fleshly characteristics like vengeance, jealousy, hatred, and anger. So it is important to understand these characteristics that Joseph did not show despite the trials and tribulations that his brothers put upon him, and despite his struggle in Egypt, he overcome that thanks to God's blessing, and he had shown his humbleness and God's nature towards his brother, and he had shown ultimately why he is in the faithful book of Hebrew. So that's all for today. See you next time. Bye.